Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Bernie Siegel. Bernie is a retired clinical professor of general and pediatric surgery at Yale. In 1978, he originated Exceptional Cancer Patients, a specific form of individual and group therapy utilizing patients' drawings, dreams, images, and feelings. ECAP is based on carefrontation, a safe, loving, therapeutic confrontation which facilitates personal lifestyle changes, personal empowerment, and the healing of the individual's life. The physical, spiritual, and psychological benefits which followed led to his desire to make everyone aware of his or her healing potential. He realized exceptional behavior is what we are all capable of. I'd like to welcome the exceptional Bernie Siegel.
I try to get people to really see life in a different way. And yeah, I have, I can say I have troubles, call them labor pains, if you will, but I'm here to enjoy the day, and the animals are always great teachers. And literally having relationships and companions. This is a study in Australia. You have a heart attack, go home to a house with a dog. They had a better survival rate at 12 months than the people who went home to a house with no dog. Okay? And women live longer than men with the same diseases. Because, again, these are quotes. I can't die though they're all married and out of the house. She had 9 kids. A man, there's no point in living. I can't work anymore. And I said, excuse me, look to your left. There are 3 good reasons. His wife and children were sitting there. It's like I hit him in the head with a mallet, that there's something more to life than working. And
So many people go through life, though, with that idea that the job is everything.
Right. I kept one lady alive because of her cats, because she came in with her family, and the kids, they were adult children, came to me and said, look, we want you to know this. Our mother has 12 cats. Her house stinks. We don't even visit her. So we're going to clean the house, get rid of the cats, then she can start her cancer treatment. I said, no. And they looked at me. No? I said, you get rid of the cats, your mother's dead. What you're to do is clean the house and keep it clean and tell your mother you can't find anyone who wants 12 cats. Then she can't die. And I'm telling you, they were so grateful for that, because they would come back to the office with her and it's like they wanted to hug me. They'd come in smiling and thanking me because of how well their mother was doing, because nobody wants 12 cats.
You have so taken a path less traveled. If you could rewrite your story, would you?
Well, you can't rewrite it, because I had to go through things to become who I am. Let me just quickly list things, and then something one of my partners said. Age 4, I had a near-death experience choking on a toy. And I was very upset I didn't die, because it was a hell of an interesting thing at 4 years of age to be out of your body looking down at this. You see, and that's where I realized I wasn't my body, because I would always say, looking down at the kid on the bed or the body. And I realized, why don't you ever say looking at myself? And I realized, because that's not you. You're not your body anymore. Over the phone, when I was very busy, a friend said to me, why are you living this life? Because she wanted me to cut back on things. I went into a trance because she said that over the phone. And I saw myself in a past life killing with a sword. And I thought, again, now you know why you're a surgeon, to help people with a knife. And I may add, that's why when our son brought home words and swords, I thought, wow, maybe he was a part of my past life. Why would a kid do that? That has happened to me. All the mind-body stuff that, again, it wasn't that I had a belief in it. It was that I experienced it or my patients did. And they weren't afraid to tell me stories. The patients would come in and say, "Oh, I know you're not a normal doctor, so I can talk to you." And they would tell me things. And the family would think I was nuts too because I enjoyed the patient when they're thinking, "Oh, a mother's crazy. She has all these experiences and things happen." And I,
I think there are a lot of experiences that are outside the scientific
right.
realm.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about a near death experience the other day, and he was saying how, as a result of this, he goes to these near death NDE, conferences. And after a few minutes, they all sit around together and they kind of wish they could go back to that universal love that they experienced as
Oh,
opposed to
yeah.
life
I,
here.
I think it's the energy of creation. When they say the light and the love, yeah, it's coming out of God. And let me say the mystical part again. She's my patient. She said, "You're not a normal doctor." I had a meeting with other mystics. I said, "Let's find a message for Dr. Siegel." She walks in, she says, "From Frank. If I known it was this easy, I'd have bought the package a long time ago and not have resisted so much." I said, "I know who that is. It's a doctor friend who just died." I called his wife. I told her a message from Frank. She let out a shriek. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry if I'm upsetting you." She said, "You're not upsetting me. That's exactly what he used to say every time he left your meeting." They and after that, this friend, her name is Monica, would call me frequently and say, "Bernie, I have a message for you." And I'd know it was about a patient, or sometimes it was a family member. My wife died a little over 2 years ago. So I thought, now this is a real test for Monica because she doesn't know that it happened. All right. I mean, she's not my neighbor. You know what I mean? So she doesn't know when she calls about all these people. I know who they end up being. But my wife died on a Friday. On Sunday morning, the phone rings and it's Monica. "Bernie, a lady, a lovely lady who was an opera singer, called me to tell me that Bobby is fine. She's back with her family and everything's all right." Now, what was my wife's mother? An opera singer. You see, those are the kinds of things you hear from Monica that there's no way for her to know any of these things. And that's when I know how true it is. And my wife has kept communicating with me through numbers, is one of the ways. Let me, because on this, in here, there are 3 dimes and 3 pennies. I'll tell you
Mhm.
why in a minute. It's a little bag, and it's a picture of my wife on the other side. Um, After my wife died, I found dimes and a penny. We were married on the 11th. See, I hear a voice at Stop and Shop say, "Go in that checkout aisle." I turn into it. There's a dime and a penny on the belt. And there's no explanation for why it would be sitting on the belt, that moves to get your groceries going. So 3 times I found a dime and a penny at Stop and Shop. I have found them in bird baths near our house that were filled with dirty water and leaves. And a voice said, "Go clean the bird bath." And there they were. The most amazing was a recent weekend, a Mother's Day. My wife was born on 9/9, and remind me to talk about that. And the weekend was 9/10/11, and we were married on the 11th. That's why the dime and penny. On the 9th, I threw some, dirty things in the washing machine and dryer. And I mean, they weren't clothing. And when I opened the dryer, when things were done, there was a dime and a penny in the dryer. And there's no way for it to get there. It wasn't my pants with a pocket full of money in there. Then on the 11th, I'm making the bed after I get up, and it's still the bed we both slept in. So I always go around to the other side to pull everything back towards me, to even it up. I took it in my hands. This is a blanket, sheets, and they pulled out of my hands. It was like somebody yanked them away, and they fell on the other side of the bed. And I looked down. What's lying there? A dime and a penny on the sheet covering the mattress. Now that has to be a miracle, okay?
Well, as you once said to me, there are no coincidences.
Yeah. And 9 months after my wife died, my heart went crazy, which again, to me, is what my work is about. The person I love died. What organ in my body is going to have a problem? My heart. So the rhythm went nuts. So I go to the emergency room. As soon as I walked in the emergency room, I hear a male voice say, "Put him in room 9." And I knew my wife was watching over me. That's her birthday, 9/9. Then they said, "We can't find a room upstairs in the hospital. You have to be here overnight." Next morning, "We got a room for you. Go upstairs. It's room 819." You add them together, it's 9/9, her birthday. And also 8 means a new beginning. As Jung said, numbers have quantity and meaning. So I knew I'll be fine. Then I look at the wristband they put on you when you're admitted to the hospital. My number that is on every wristband now, when I go anywhere, to the doctor, starts with an 8, and then it's 996633. Everything adds up to nines again. And the hospital visit number also every time has added up to, nines. So I know that she's watching over me and sending me signs. Oh, one that was even crazier. It was last winter, my gloves got some holes in them. And, so I said to my wife, who has died, "I need a new pair of gloves." I come out shopping at Stop and Shop. What's sitting next to the driver's door by my car? A pair of gloves. And again, it's not the car next to me left and dropped something, because it's the same car as when I parked. So the one thing I'm trying for, the impact on the world that hasn't worked yet, because I said to my wife, I want to win the lottery with our numbers of our birthday. We have 7 people, but because of twins, we have 6 birthdays. So we can use the 6 numbers for lottery, see, and for anything with a Powerball. I said, put your day 9 down, and then we'll be the other, and we'll see if it works someday. If it does,
Well, if you won, what would you do with the money?
help the world. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to be crazy like lottery winners. Yeah, my desire is to improve the world, help people. Like I just, reading articles in the newspaper, and I wish I had enough money to say, "Hey, let me help you." Some homeless person, somebody with kids and is having a hell of a tough time. Yeah.
If you could give patients some advice in terms of how to be exceptional, what would you tell them?
Well, see, the psychiatrists understand it better than doctors, because if you thought, "Oh, I'm going to be dead in a few months," and you go to the doctor and then you live for 3 years, the psychiatrist realizes your personality had something to do with that. See? So one psychiatrist came up with a list called immune competent personality when he was helping AIDS patients years ago. And I share that with people. So there's a personality to those people. They'll join a group. If you tell them to read a book and draw a picture, they'll say, "Okay, I'll be back tomorrow." They'll sit up and read the book and draw the picture. And others, you won't see them for 3 months because I'm not an artist. I don't have time for books, or I'll have my kids do the drawings. So you sense that very quickly in people. When I send out 100 letters originally to start the group, I expected hundreds of people to show up. A doctor is telling you, "I want to help you live a longer, better life." And a dozen women appeared.
I think that's true across the population. I think
Yeah.
that there's a minority of people
How we're brought
who
up. Parenting is the key to survival. Let me give you one more statistic. I don't mean to interrupt you, but See, I didn't realize that because I grew up with love and parents who what I call mottos to live by. They do what makes you happy. God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. Money was to help make the world easier for people. That's because my father's father died when he was a kid. So he realized the struggles people were going through. So, I realized that these people had something to teach us and we needed to point them out. My wife came up with the term exceptional patients because I'm expecting 200 or 300 people to show up saying, yeah, I want to live a longer, healthier life. And then 12 women, but they became my teachers. Because I realized what their personalities were like, um, their feeling, the spiritual faith, all these things entered into it. It wasn't just what the doctor could do for me, but there were people who went home to die and then came back to the office. And I would always say, how come you didn't die? And they didn't come back because I gave them an appointment. You know what I mean? They said, I'm going home. I got a couple months to live. Goodbye. And then 6 months later or 6 years later, they'd show up because they needed a doctor. And I'd say, why did you come back? Well, what am I coming back for? Everybody tells me we're going to die. So they went home and started living, and their body got the message. It's like Monday morning, literally, we have more suicides, heart attacks, all kinds of problems than we do other days of the week because how people feel on Monday. And when you don't like life, your body gets the message.
Yes, it does.
Use actors. A student did this. His professor didn't think it would work, but he let him do it as part of his thesis. He got a couple of actors. In one scene, male and female, they're in a comedy, and he's drawing their blood while they're acting. And in the comedy, the immune function went up, stress hormone levels went down. In the tragedy in which this man murders her husband, he's drawing the blood, and the opposite happens. Immune function goes down, stress hormone levels up. So again, studies, cancer patients who laugh for no reason 3 or 4 times a day had a better survival rate than a group who didn't laugh for no reason. Okay? And I always say, if you're in a Mel Brooks play through the winter, you don't get the flu. See, but if you're in Death of a Salesman, you drop out for a couple of weeks because you're exhausted and come down with the flu. And that's part of what I say to survive. Act as if you're the person you want to be.
Well, and I always call it our matrix. I think it's really important to consciously decide what we let into our lives
Yeah.
and to look at what our perspective is. And if it's not a good one, examine it and see how it can be changed.
What you said is very important because the way it was in the immune competent personality was if you're asked to do something you do not want to do, what do you tell the person? And the right answer is no. That's what you're just saying. I mean, you got to live your life. You're not letting others take your life away by imposing things on you. But that's too often what parents do to children.
Oh, parents, you find it in medicine. I was certainly faced with a point where I was told my cancer was back, I needed lots of tests, and I walked out, put my house up for sale, and went traveling, and here I am. And I think that listening to that intuition for what is right for you and being still enough to find it sometimes
Right.
is incredibly important.
Yeah, those are the patients who woke me up when, they go home. No, I don't want any chemotherapy. This was a landscaper neighbor. He said, no, it's springtime. I'm going to go and make the world beautiful. So when I die, I leave a beautiful world. So he went home expecting to die. 6 years later, he was in the office. And to make a long story short, he said, yeah, I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business. He lived to 91 and became my therapist, see, because John went home to keep the world beautiful. And he saw the world in a way that I never saw it. I mean, he was into every little growing thing. So I found that the world became so much prettier for me that it actually would drive me crazy often, because if I was biking or jogging, I'd be stopping and pulling up plants and carrying them home with me, um, because they were so pretty, even though you'd call it, that's a weed. Never mind, look at that little flower. Yeah, I have 13 red maples, the Japanese maples,
Yeah.
on my property, all of which I brought home when out running, because I'd see these 2 or 3 inch little red maples growing, and I'd pull them up and take them home and plant them. And now it's these big, beautiful trees. And the problem is, you live in the same place long enough and you keep sticking trees and things in the ground, it gets crazy. But
But it's a lesson in awareness of beauty,
yeah,
and I think that that has to be an integral part of life.
it is. You decide what you see, is what I often say to people. Um, Nobody else tells you what's in front of you. And it is from the biblical line, if you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. If you bring forth what's within you, what you bring forth will save you. So when you store up all this trouble and you don't express it, you're in trouble. But when you let it all out, get rid of it, then you can heal. Yeah. So, when parents impose a life on you, again, you have 6 months to live. Well, then I'm closing my law office and starting to play my violin, the thing my parents never wanted me to be, a violinist. He didn't die. He got a job in an orchestra. They, and I never forget one lawyer saying, while learning to think, I almost forgot how to feel. Because in the midst of a tragedy, he found himself thinking, how am I going to help people? You know, Everything from where do I park that car to what do I do with this or that, because it was a tragedy in the street and the person was taken in the emergency room, and he was left with cars and keys and all kinds of things. And then he realized, dumbbell, go to the emergency room. That's where you belong. Not worrying about where to put things and park cars. Yeah.
Bernie, thank you. You are just one of my heroes, and I'm so grateful for the time with you.
Thank you. I've realized something too, that there's an energy that the audience helps me, because there are times I would speak and feel drained and realize it had to do with who was in the audience. Did they agree with me? Were they willing to do the things I was talking about? And then there are other times you'd speak and you'd, feel full of energy. And again, I realized it's the audience and what they're sending to you because of what you're giving to them. And
Some years ago, you said something to me that had a profound impact on my life. It was about Anti-Cancer Club, and you said, you have the wrong name. And it was partly an homage to David Servin Shriver and his work, but you gave me the quote from Mother Teresa, where, when asked if she would go to an anti-war rally, she said, "No, but I will go to a pro-peace rally."
right.
That always stuck with me because
Thank
it's a
you.
profound difference in terms of how you look at the world.
Hmm. Yeah, let me add one more story.
Mm.
Years ago, I did a meditation because you're talking about things in my life. And I met a man named George. And I realized also, as I got to know him in my meditations, that my talks, like talking to you, I don't have notes or, outlines. It just flowed. And I realized I'm not deciding what to say, I'm just saying it. The way I put it was, I'm like the TV set. I didn't create the program, I'm displaying it. And one night, I still had a list of, an outline, what I was going to talk about, but I never looked at it. And I just stood there talking. And I realized it's not me, it's George. First lady came up from the audience, and this was at a spiritual center too, which I think had a factor, and said, I've heard you before, that was better than usual. I said, I agree with you. The next person said, There was a man standing in front of you for the entire lecture, so I drew his picture for you. And she drew George. He has a big beard, had a funny cap on I didn't understand, and spiritual looking outfit. I learned about that later, because at this same place, a year or two later, a Christian friend had his funeral, and I was asked to speak about it. After the funeral, the healer, her name is Olga Worrell. She's an incredible person. She and her husband, Ambrose, they had all kinds of mystical experience from the time they were children, seeing people that nobody else could see sitting in the room or things like that. And she walked up to me and said, "Bernie, you Jewish?" I said, "What are you asking that for? Because I spoke at a Christian funeral." "No, there's a rabbi standing next to you." And she described George in total detail. And I realized this was the prayer cap from hundreds of years ago, not the little, piece of material. And his beard and his garments were related to the religion also. But for her to say, "No, there's a rabbi standing next to you." So George and I do everything together. He's with me all the time. And I've heard voices literally speaking to me for years and years. And most often, it was when my mind was quiet. In other words, if I was jogging, riding a bike, taking a walk, so I didn't have to think about what I was doing.
It's so important to disengage your brain, don't you think?
Yeah. And I mean, the things that were said to me are so meaningful. Just one more quickie. The day I went out for a walk before I went to the hospital, because my father decided what day he was going to die. And we were going to have a big party in the hospital room, and then he would die. A voice said, "How did your parents meet?" I said, "I don't know. Ask your mother when you get to the hospital." That had an incredible, profound effect, because I walk in and see, this is the other thing. I didn't say, "Mom, sorry, Dad, I love you." That's what I wanted to do when I came in the room. But what does George do? I walk in and say, "How did you two meet?" And I was going to apologize, for saying that versus "I love you." But before I could say anything, my mother said, "Oh, I was on the beach with girls I didn't know on vacation. And I learned later they had a terrible reputation. And boys were coming down the beach and they tossed coins, and your father lost and got me." From then on, the stories got worse. I began to wonder, why did you keep going out with each other? I mean, she fell off a boat into the water when my father forgot to pay for it, and the man yelled, "You didn't pay." So he let go of my mother in the boat. And one story after another. The whole room was laughing, including my dying father. He looked so wonderful and healthy. I thought, uh-oh, he's going to say, "I'm not dying today. This is too much fun. I'm sorry I got you all here." But when the last person, our daughter, came in, and we said, "Oh, Carolyn's here," then he took his last breath. See, consciously, he couldn't know who's coming, but unconsciously, he knew. And so when the last person came, he took his last breath and died. Yeah. But looking so healthy and wonderful. That's why you talk about laughter. He was basically in a coma, but he could hear, the words, like somebody under anesthesia, that their hearing is still working. But he looked so great. I thought he's going to say, "Let's do this again tomorrow," But when the time came, he just went. And the kids in the room, because there were grandchildren there too. And I never forget how they said, "Is that what death is like? I was afraid to be here." And then it was such a beautiful, peaceful, happy moment. There was nothing for them to be afraid of anymore. Yeah.
That's a wonderful story.
The only thing to be afraid of, this is from a 90-year-old lady who I asked to join our group, because I said, "You're a natural therapist. You've been through everything, including cancer." I said to her one day, "What are you afraid of?" when everybody was in a panic. And she didn't answer me. And after a few minutes, I said, "What are you afraid of?" Oh, I got it. What is it? Driving on the parkway at night. And the whole room busted out laughing. So remember to tell that to people. The only thing to fear is driving on the parkway at night.
I will remember that one.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it off.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. Bump in the Road is a production of Cancer Road Trip. Subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media at Cancer Road Trip, and you can learn more at www.cancerroadtrip.com. Until next time, be safe and be well.